Welcome to the Senior Techie Podcast. Have you noticed a parent who used to call every Sunday, but suddenly they're going quiet for weeks at a time?
Right. Or maybe a spouse who just says they're tired, a lot more often than they used to be. But that tiredness, that fog, it just never really seems to lift.
Yeah, exactly. And, those subtle shifts, the silence, the withdrawal, the endless fatigue, it plays out in so many homes. You see it happening to someone you love, and it is incredibly easy to just chalk it all up to getting older.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have this pervasive cultural script that tells us, well, slowing down and stepping back, that's just an expected, unavoidable part of aging.
But, and this is why we're here today, we want to tell you that this flat, foggy mood it's not a standard feature of aging. Very often what looks like just slowing down is actually clinical depression or anxiety.
Yeah, and the reassuring part of this whole equation is that these conditions are highly treatable. They really are. And they're much easier to catch early than we might assume.
Right, so our mission for this conversation is to uncover why mental health issues in older adults are so frequently missed by both families and doctors.
And how you can recognize the real signs that are, kind of hiding in plain sight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also how simple everyday technology can actually step in as an invaluable early warning system, which fits perfectly with our ethos in the senior techie community.
It really does, yeah.
Because we so often assume that tech is just about convenience,
Yeah.
right? Like ordering groceries online or, I don't know, asking a smart speaker for the weather.
Right, right.
But here, we look at technology as a powerful tool for connection and well-being. It's about using the devices you might already have in your home or, right in your pocket to look out for the people you love.
Or to look out for yourself, for that matter. I mean, it's really about taking control. But before we get into the mechanisms of how to actually catch these signs, we first have to dismantle this massive misconception about aging and mood.
Yeah, we have to figure out why we automatically assume that sadness or just, severe lethargy is standard. Let's unpack this idea of normal aging, because assuming depression is just a natural part of getting older. It's a lot like assuming a car is supposed to run horribly just because it has 100,000 miles on the odometer.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, sure, a high-mileage car might need more maintenance, the suspension might creak a little, you have some wear and tear, but it's not supposed to just randomly break down, sputter out, and be left running on 3 cylinders.
Exactly. If the engine is misfiring, something specific is broken under the hood. It's an actual mechanical failure.
Right.
And, the National Institute on Aging takes a very firm stance on this. They state clearly that depression is not a normal part of growing older.
Which is such a relief to hear, honestly.
It is. Now, getting older certainly involves experiences that can trigger depression. We have to acknowledge that. Loss of loved ones, the onset of a chronic illness, or just a creeping sense of social isolation.
Yeah, those are major triggers.
But we have to separate the triggers from the actual condition. Chronic stress from isolation, it literally reshapes cortisol levels in the brain, setting off clinical depression.
Wow.
So that depression is a specific medical event. It's not just an inevitable phase of life you have to accept.
And we are dealing with a massive scale here. The numbers we found are frankly staggering. The National Council on Aging notes that 1 in 4 older adults deals with some kind of behavioral health issue.
1 in 4.
Which includes depression, anxiety, or substance misuse. And New York's Office for the Aging reports that 20% of adults over 55 experience some form of mental illness.
It's huge. And to add to the statistics, the most sobering piece of data we encountered shows that men over 85 have the highest suicide rate of any age group in the country.
That statistic it stops you in your tracks.
Yeah.
Men over 85.
Yeah.
Because thinking about that specific demographic, the silent generation and, older boomers, they were raised with a very strict stoic mentality.
Very much so.
The cultural expectation was that men do not complain, and they certainly do not talk about feeling sad.
And that stoicism, it becomes a severe vulnerability when a genuine mental health crisis hits, because they don't have the vocabulary or really the willingness to express emotional pain.
So it just gets entirely internalized.
Right, until it becomes a life-threatening emergency.
So if the numbers are this high and the outcomes can be this severe, I have to ask, how is this flying under the radar so completely? Like, how are families and even doctors missing a crisis of this magnitude?
Well, because late-life depression is a master of disguise. It
Yeah.
rarely looks like the traditional tearful sadness we see depicted in movies or on TV.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in older adults, depression hides behind physical symptoms. It shows up as severe trouble sleeping, unexplained aches and pains, a sudden loss of appetite, or just this general vague sense of feeling unwell.
Okay, wait. So if physical symptoms like a bad back or sudden stomach issues are throwing doctors off the scent, does the doctor just like treat the physical pain and send them home?
That is unfortunately very common. The CDC notes that doctors frequently misread these signs. They see the physical symptoms, they treat the physical illness, mainly because the older patient never actually mentions feeling sad.
I see.
And the mechanism behind this is fascinating. Depression actually heightens inflammation in the body. It alters neural pathways related to pain perception.
Oh, wow. So the back pain the patient feels is entirely real.
Exactly. The pain is completely real, but the root cause driving that pain is psychiatric. So the BAP gets a prescription, but the underlying mood disorder goes totally unchecked.
That seems almost unfair to patients that their own bodies are basically tricking doctors. What about anxiety? Does it pull a similar trick?
Yeah.
Because there's this pervasive myth that as we get older, we naturally just mellow out and anxiety fades away.
Yeah, that's definitely a myth. The Anxiety and Depression Association of America states plainly that anxiety does not fade with age. It just receives a lot less attention. Take the transition into retirement as a prime example. We often hear from people asking if it's normal to feel incredibly anxious after retiring. And, it is common to feel a sense of unease. Your daily structure, your social contact, it's all suddenly disappeared.
I can completely understand that. You lose your routine, your work friends, your whole identity might shift. There's bound to be a transition period,
Right.
but a transition shouldn't wreck your ability to function.
And that is the dividing line right there. If you have persistent worry that is, say, disrupting your sleep architecture or your daily function, that is not an adjustment period. That's clinical anxiety.
Okay, so if depression can disguise itself as physical pain, what happens when it starts affecting the brain? Can depression actually be misdiagnosed as cognitive decline or dementia?
Yes, and this is perhaps the most crucial point for our listeners. Depression can mimic dementia in a pattern sometimes called pseudo-dementia.
Pseudodementia.
Right. When someone is severely depressed, it actually depletes vital neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine and serotonin. This depletion drastically slows down executive function. So the person might exhibit severe forgetfulness, confusion, or incredibly slow thinking.
Oh man, so families see the confusion, they immediately panic, and they assume it's the onset of permanent Alzheimer's.
Exactly. They assume it's structural brain decay, when in reality, it's the dense fog of severe depression.
Which means a proper, thorough medical evaluation is absolutely vital before anyone assumes memory loss is permanent. You have to rule out the treatable conditions first.
Precisely.
Because, pseudodementia is terrifying, but it's also somewhat of a relief, right? Because it means we might be looking at a treatable condition.
Yes.
But we also know there are massive barriers to getting that proper medical evaluation. Cost, lack of insurance, transportation issues when driving gets hard.
Not to mention the generational stigma we touched on earlier. For many older adults, going to therapy is viewed as a weakness rather than just basic self-care. It's that old pull yourself up by your bootstraps mindset.
Right. And speaking of emotional navigation, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about triggers, specifically the loss of a loved one. If you're a caregiver, how do you tell the difference between normal grief after losing a spouse and clinical depression?
That's a great question. It really comes down to the pattern and the texture of the emotions. Grief typically comes in waves.
Waves, okay.
Yeah, you might experience a wave of intense sadness, but even in the midst of grieving, you can still have moments of joy. You can still laugh at a fond memory or genuinely enjoy a visit from a grandchild.
But depression is different.
Very different. Depression is a persistent, heavy flattening of emotion. It flattens your interest in nearly everything, and that joy is just constantly absent. That continuous flattening is your red flag.
Okay, let me see if I have this straight. The symptoms are masquerading as aches and pains. People are reluctant to talk about their feelings due to stigma, and it might even look like early-stage dementia.
Okay.
So how do we spot this trouble before it becomes a full-blown crisis? Are we talking about installing cameras in our parents' living rooms to watch their every move?
No, not at all. We are talking about using everyday devices as an early warning system. But before we explore how researchers are utilizing these tools, let's identify and define some of the technical jargon you'll encounter in this space.
I really appreciate that because tech jargon can be incredibly alienating. And at the Senior Techie, our whole goal is to empower, not confuse. Let's break down the terminology. What's first?
The first term you'll see a lot is smart home sensors. Now, try not to picture a complicated, humming computer network watching your every move.
Good, because that sounds terrifying.
Right. Think of them more like those simple, motion-activated nightlights you plug into a hallway baseboard. They do not record video, and they do not listen to your conversations.
Okay, so they literally just sense movement.
Exactly.
So if the nightlight usually turns on at 7 in the morning when someone goes to the kitchen for coffee, but now it's not triggering until noon, that becomes a meaningful data point.
You got it. You are tracking the absence of normal routines.
Makes sense.
The next term is wearables, which usually refers to a smartwatch or a fitness band. A good way to visualize this is as a tiny automatic health diary strapped to your wrist.
An automatic health diary, I like that.
Yeah, because normally you have to remember to write down how far you walked or what time you woke up. This digital diary simply writes it all down for you automatically as you go about your day.
I mean, I wear one every day, but I honestly mostly just think of it as a step counter. It tracks a lot more than just movement, doesn't it?
It does. Which brings us to our third term, physiological signals. Think of these signals as your body's automatic dashboard. To understand how a wearable reads this dashboard, you have to know that these devices use tiny optical sensors. They literally shine a very small light into your skin to measure blood flow.
Wait, really? It measures my pulse just by shining a light through my skin?
Yeah. By analyzing the tiny changes in blood volume and the time between your heartbeats, which is a metric known as heart rate variability, the device can essentially read your dashboard.
Wow.
It can tell if your nervous system is in a relaxed state or a highly stressed state, even if you're just sitting totally still in a chair.
That is fascinating. Okay, so what's the last term?
The final term is AI companion apps.
Oh boy. When I hear AI companion, I immediately worry it sounds like we're handing our parents over to a robot to talk to instead of an actual human being.
I know, it does sound a bit science fiction, but a much more accurate way to understand these apps is to think of them as an interactive self-help workbook.
An interactive workbook.
Okay. Right. These apps use language models to analyze the text messages you type into them. They can identify negative thought patterns and gently guide you through cognitive behavioral therapy exercises. Things like real-time reframing or breathing techniques.
So it's not pretending to be a human friend. It's more like a digital journal that helps you process your thoughts using established psychological methods.
Exactly. That is the function they serve. So with those tools defined, the motion-activated nightlights, the automatic health diary, the body's dashboard, and the interactive workbook, researchers are now using these everyday devices to flag emerging depression weeks before a doctor's visit would ever catch it.
Oh, that's incredible. How does that actually play out in a real-world scenario?
Well, let's look at the automatic health diary, the wearable. If a person's step counter shows they've consistently been walking 2 miles a day, and suddenly it shows a week of near-zero activity, that drop is a massive signal.
Yeah, that's a huge change.
Or consider a smart speaker in the kitchen. If it's usually playing music or radio shows every morning and suddenly it sits completely silent for days on end, you have another major behavioral shift.
It's basically the digital equivalent of noticing they haven't walked down the driveway to pick up their mail in 3 days.
The concept is identical, yes, just translated to digital habits.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have those interactive workbooks, the AI companion apps. Apps like WISA build in mood tracking alongside those cognitive behavioral therapy exercises we discussed.
I've heard of WISA.
Yeah, and other apps, like one called Urkick, actually track those physiological signals, reading your heart rate dashboard alongside how you say you're feeling. They are designed to look for rising anxiety before it spikes into a full panic attack.
Okay, but let me ask a practical question. If my dad's smartwatch shows he hasn't walked his usual 2 miles for 3 days, should I immediately call a therapist and stage an intervention?
Actually, no. You want to look for patterns over 2 weeks, not just 3 days.
Oh, 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, we all have bad days. Or we catch a cold and stay in bed. It's a sustained 2-week flattening of mood or activity that signals something clinical is developing.
Okay, that's good to know. But even with that 2-week buffer, I can definitely hear our audience worrying about the human element here. You know, is this technology replacing human connection? Are we just using an app as an excuse to avoid dealing with our loved ones' feelings directly?
It's a completely valid concern, and we must be incredibly clear about this. These technologies are absolutely not therapy replacements. No credible researcher or doctor is suggesting we replace human interaction with a smartphone.
Right. So it sounds like the phone isn't replacing the conversation. It's more like it's just tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you should go have a conversation.
Exactly. Think of these apps and trackers as a bridge. They're for that lonely Tuesday afternoon when the house is quiet, the anxiety is creeping in, and the next real therapy appointment isn't for another 2 weeks.
Right. It fills the gap.
It gives the individual a tool in the moment, and it gives family members a gentle tap on the shoulder that something in the routine has shifted.
Okay. So once we get that tap on the shoulder, either from a device or just our own observations, what are the concrete steps we can take this week? Like if I see a 2-week pattern of withdrawal, how do I ask, when's the last time you felt good?
Hmm.
Without sounding like I'm interrogating them.
It's entirely about the framing. You address it the exact same way you would a physical ailment, which helps bypass the stigma.
How so?
You might say, I've noticed your back has been bothering you, but I've also noticed you seem a bit down lately. That just haven't seemed like yourself. How are you holding up emotionally?
I see.
You frame checking in on their mental health exactly like you would check in on a friend recovering from physical surgery. Ask directly how they are feeling, not just how their body feels.
So treating mental health is just another aspect of physical health. And when therapy is brought up, we can use that same framing, right? Like talk about it like getting a knee replacement. It's just one more medical tool for feeling better, not some sort of moral failing.
That framing is essential. And, if the conversation progresses to a doctor and medication is considered, there is a physiological mechanism everyone really needs to understand.
Oh,
As we age, our liver and kidney functions naturally slow down
which changes how the body processes pharmaceuticals.
drastically. A standard dose of an antidepressant that works perfectly for a 30-year-old can stay in an older adult's bloodstream much longer, potentially building up to toxic levels.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this is why older adults typically require much lower starting doses and a significantly slower adjustment period. Having a doctor who is intimately familiar with geriatric care is essential because they understand this altered chemistry.
That is so important to keep in mind. And from the technology side, a very practical step our listeners can take is to simply glance at those activity trends, occasionally, provided that they have permission, of course.
Right, always with permission.
But do not assume that no news is good news.
Ah,
A smart speaker that usually plays music every morning, sitting completely silent, is a very loud warning sign.
yes. And we also have to discuss what to do if those subtle warning signs escalate into an immediate crisis.
Definitely.
If you witness sudden reckless behavior, a dramatic spike in sleeping, complete isolation from people they used to love, or a sudden heavy spike in drinking, those are immediate crisis signs.
And obviously, if they talk about being a burden or feeling trapped, those statements must be taken seriously.
Never ignore those. Do not wait those out hoping they'll pass. If you find yourself in that situation, you need to utilize the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
Just dial 988.
Yes, it's free, it's confidential, and it connects you to a trained counselor 24 hours a day. You can call or text 988, and it works on any phone. You do not need a smartphone. A basic landline works just fine.
And veterans can simply dial 988 and press 1 to reach the Veterans Crisis Line directly. The best piece of practical advice we can give you right now is to pull out your phone, open your contacts, and save 988 under something you will recognize instantly, like Crisis Line.
It takes 10 seconds to save, and you never know when you or someone you love might need to use it. Another excellent tech tip is to review Apple Support's guide for emergency SOS and medical ID.
Oh, that's a great feature.
It takes just a few minutes to set up, and it transforms a locked smartphone into a device that can automatically call for help and share your critical medical conditions with first responders.
That is the exact kind of empowerment we advocate for at the Senior Techie, using the device already sitting in your pocket to create a comprehensive safety net. It completely shifts the narrative away from aging being about inevitably fading into the background. With the right attention and the right tools, you can catch the clouds before the storm hits.
Which actually brings us to a really fascinating thought to leave you with. Consider the digital footprints we leave every single day. How much we walk, the specific music we ask our smart speakers to play, the text messages we suddenly stop sending. Your devices might actually recognize your emotional state before you even admit it to yourself.
That is wild to think about. Technology isn't just about keeping us busy. It really is a mirror reflecting our underlying well-being.
Yeah.
We just have to learn how to look at the reflection.
Exactly. And if you want to learn more about recognizing these signs and the mechanisms we discussed, we highly recommend checking out the National Institute of Mental Health's page on older adults. It's a fantastic evidence-based resource.
This podcast was brought to you by The Senior Techie. It's available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. If you'd like to receive their free newsletters, you can subscribe at subscribe.theseniortechie.com.